Of course, at this stage, in MBBS final year, it looks very one of the many facts. But when you go to clinical practice, ultimately, all these things, protocols become left and right a routine thing for you. Even if you are sleeping, somebody gave you a call and said that bed number 5, 68-year-old colonel, retired colonel, whom we found membranous, who had nephrotic syndrome, doctor, just now histopathology report came, it is found to be membranous nephropathy. Even if you are sleeping and picked up the phone, you will wake up and say, oh, then just get his positron emission tomography of the body to search for any internal malignancy, PET scan. You will say, because first time you should know certain common protocols. Second time you should try to discover a patient who fit into that protocol. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, independently you should practice the protocol. Sixth time you are called consultant. Hence people will do MD and then become consultants. Why? The 3 years is meant to implement the protocols. A woman who had undergone earlier couple of times cesarean, can I still do vaginal delivery? It's called vaginal VBAC, vaginal birth after cesarean. First you must know in which scenarios I can do. It depends on what were the indications for the cesarean earlier, etc., etc. Are there any recurrent indications for the cesarean, etc., etc. So that's the reason, doctor, final year MBBS is the shaping yourself into the first step of becoming consultants. Housemanship is the most crucial step of doing mistakes, and post graduation is doing super mistakes. And then if you do all these things, you will come out as a good clean practitioner who will not do mistakes. After becoming consultant, if you still plead, oh sorry, I don't know, is it like this, then you have missed the bus. And we read so much, but ultimately when we clinically practice, we will narrow down into few protocols which we everyday practice we will practice. So mastering those protocols is all about learning medicine. Okay, doc? Now next time when you walk into the hospital, when you have been discovering a nephrotic syndrome patient in the medicine ward, you are going to talk all these things to your postgraduate. Do you think this is simple diabetic nephropathy leading to it? Is it possibly membranous nephropathy? Shall we do or shall we not do renal biopsy? If we do renal biopsy, what are the outcomes? The entire algorithm, diagnostic and management algorithm tree, you are expected to discuss in the hospital. Now doctor, remission is very common with membranous glomerulonephritis, but how does it differ from that of minimal change disease? Minimal change disease guys don't end up in CRF generally, but membranous nephropathy guys, 1/3 of them will end up in chronic kidney disease and renal failure. And even if you give steroid or don't give steroid, it is not going to change the survival rate in case of membranous glomerulonephritis. Now let us look at one small histopathology. What you are seeing here is segmentally there is a sclerotic lesions found, and it looks as such there are some pinholes into the nephron, which is typical of membranous glomerulopathy. If you do immunofluorescence, all this immunoglobulin G, which is deposited along the capillary walls leading to the thickening of the glomerular capillary walls, is very characteristic of membranous glomerulopathy. If you do electron microscopy, you find in the subepithelial location, are you able to see the deposits? These are the deposits. Okay, doc. So subepithelial electron dense deposits in the basement membrane is very typical in case of membranous glomerulopathy. Another common question asked in any exam is, in which glomerulopathy, where is the location of electron dense deposits? Subendothelial deposition कहाँ देखेगा? Subepithelial कहाँ रहेगा? All these things you must differentiate one from other. Anyway, that's a pathology discussion purely. Now, the next important entity is IgA nephropathy, which is called as Berger's disease. How does the patient present to you? Doctor, recently I had a sore throat, doctor, 2 days back. When I was passing urine in the college toilet, I found that I am passing almost blood into the toilet. Is he post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis? No. Because post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis means sore throat and passing blood into the toilet is 14 days gap. But here it is only 2 days gap. Hence, what is it called as? Synpharyngitic hematuria. Along with the pharyngitis, there is a development of hematuria. Synpharyngitic hematuria is IgA nephropathy. So, why it is called, what are the 3 words you must know to qualify IgA nephropathy? Benign, recurrent hematuria. The 3 words which you should not forget. Then once more patient will say, after 2-3 days I am alright, doctor, but once more I had one more sore throat episode, once more I am passing blood into the college toilet. So, benign recurrent hematuria is IgA nephropathy. And if you say, which is the most common cause for the glomerular hematuria? What do you mean by glomerular hematuria? Hematuria can be from bladder, urethra, ureter, anywhere, or it can be from glomerulus. How will you recognize? By the dysmorphic RBCs. Among the glomerular causes leading to hematuria, the most common cause is IgA nephropathy is what need to be remembered. Another peculiar thing, it's called benign, because if you order for urea creatinine, it will be normal. Patient will not go into any ARF or CRF with the IgA nephropathy. If you do electron microscopy, in the mesangium of the glomerulus, there is a lot of immunoglobulin A and C3 which are typically deposited. Now let us look into histopathology. The glomerulus is showing increased cellularity in the mesangium, too many cells, but the capillary loops are not really affected. And if you do immunoglobulin A staining, mesangium is all staining anti-IgA positivity, which is another important feature. If you do the electron microscopy, it is not subendothelial or subepithelial. It is the mesangium directly where the electron deposits are all landing. So, this is the characteristic feature of IgA nephropathy. Generally, prognosis is good. There is a good preservation of renal function. If it is little unstable, we give steroids. And there are also some studies giving fish oil. Fish oil is considered to be good for patients of IgA nephropathy. There are some controversies whether it is really effective, useful or not, but steroids sometimes will be required. Now the next important entity you need to know in the glomerulopathies is Alport syndrome. Mainly inheritance you must know. It can be X-linked or autosomal dominant. 2 forms are there. Patients will have hematuria, pyuria, proteinuria, hearing loss, high frequency hearing loss and progressive renal failure. These are the important features. Where is the relation between hearing loss, hematuria and renal failure? Why multiple different entities are happening in the person? Where is the underlying problem located in Alport syndrome? Basically, the glomerular basement membrane contains collagen type 4. There is a congenital genetic defect in the production of the collagen 4 which leads to the development of the Alport syndrome is what you are going to ultimately remember. and there is no effective treatment. If you do electron microscopy, you find splitting and lamellation of the GBM. Splitting and lamellation, like a layer. GBM converts into a layer due to the collagen defect, is very typical of Alports. Another classical example where you are able to see typical splitting, splintering of the GBM is considered to be this splitting, splintering of the GBM in Alports is what you need to remember. Now let us talk about secondary glomerular disorders is another important entity. What's a very common cause people develop secondary glomerular disorders, doctor? We already discussed diabetes. Diabetes. Generally Viva questions are very simple questions. What is the cause of chronic kidney disease that you know? Can you tell me one or two, like a parrot, I will pass you in the exam, is the deal with the examiner. That time if you start with Alport syndrome, examiner will be little dumbstruck. If you start with diabetes, very happy. Next, hypertension, very happy. Then you talk anything, HIV, etc., etc., examiner will start adding extra score to you. Now, probably after theory, before practicals, we will have a sort of quick gunshot like 500 Viva Voce questions. Because already you know everything in theory, what to answer like a parrot, 500 parrots, like an answer. Especially valvular heart disease is a common question. So there can be a question on that. Few things, but hope that we get time to do all that. So diabetic nephropathy, hypertensive nephropathy, lupus nephritis, they're all called secondary glomerular. Then you have membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis is another important entity. In this there are type 1 and type 2 which is studied in pathology. Type 2 is called dense deposit disease. Only that word, if you remember, for now it is enough. Let us not go too deep into the pathology because it really doesn't help now.